For 100 million years, birds have been developing a feel for the sky. Grasping air by the wingful, they pull themselves up and almost magically, they soar. Only 100 years ago, we learned what the birds know instinctively. Flying is serious business, but with a magic all its own.
When I'm flying that airplane, I'm alive, and I'm part of that airplane, and that airplane's part of me. I'm absolutely in love with it, and I know I belong there. This is what I was born for.
There's a joy known to all who share the sky. Birds have had 100 million years to refine their touch, their sensitivity to the thin fabric of air. But it takes years of training before we can acquire that feel for the sky. Years before a pilot can fly as if the plane were a second skin. The Blue Angels spend 3 months a year in the California desert refining their sense of touch. It takes a practiced hand to stitch up the sky with a needle moving this fast.
Little flats and deeps? Yeah. 3's rock solid. Okay. I got a little mismatch on that start, too. 5 on start, 5 flat on start.
Each pilot's performance is critiqued and taped for further study. In the first month of training, there are plenty of rough edges.
On top.
We start out with very basic things, turning the smoke on and off at the same time. And then we build on that. And just every day we try to do everything exactly the same.
But it's clear that there's a long way to go. Ryan Scholl, the rookie in the number 6 jet, is having difficulty with one of the hardest maneuvers, the vertical roll.
Yeah, that's what it's rolled like.
When an airplane is spiraling this fast, the right touch is the only thing that can keep it under control.
It only takes about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch of stick movement in the wrong direction, and the airplane will go into out-of-control flight.
And out-of-control flight is not a good thing.
Looks like this time, just a little bit of positive.
In the debriefing room, Mark Provo, the lead solo pilot, gives his rookie partner some pointers. For Ryan, the vertical rolls must become second nature.
The airplane can get uncontrollable very quickly, and you have to do it very precisely, and it takes concentration, stick position, a feel in the pants, because once you start rolling, all your gauges, everything starts to spin, and the whole world starts to spin, and that's what you want to feel. You want to feel a real tight, crisp roll rate. If you don't, then it's time to turn the smoke off and clear out of the maneuver early, because pretty soon you're going to be departing, and the airplane gives you very little warning when you're max performing it like that.
Taking high-performance jets to the edge requires precision. That's why during desert training, the Blue Angels fly 2 hops a day, 6 days a week. Each morning, the maintenance team test runs the systems and inspects the entire plane for problems. The airplanes have to be just as flawless as the pilots. In a way, these pilots are learning to walk. Well, fly, a very fine line between perfection and disaster.
Everything has to be very precise and very deliberate because there really is no room for mistakes. It's not just sitting in a seat, pushing buttons and moving a stick around. It's a very high-speed, unforgiving environment.
Like any good magic act, the 2 solo pilots need perfect timing and teamwork to pull off their dynamic sleight of hand.
Right prior to center point, we do a 270-degree roll away from each other. And it's a totally blind roll, and I am right next to him. So it's a complete trust maneuver. We try to make it look like one plane, and then he pulls away, and there's 2 planes there. And it's probably 5 times out of 100 we do it the way we want to do it.
As the air show season approaches, the Blue Angels are almost ready, but not quite. Today we take airplanes for granted. But just a century ago, flight was only a dream populated by birds. Realizing that dream took a great leap of imagination. In the late 1800s, Otto Lilienthal of Germany flew the world's first successful hang glider, but it suffered from a control problem that would cost him his life. It was Wilbur and Orville Wright, 2 bicycle makers from Dayton, Ohio, who took a new approach to the problem. When people said that airplanes couldn't be controlled, the brothers turned to their experience designing those other unstable machines.
When you think about controlling an airplane, you have to do it in 3 axes, really: pitch, yaw, and roll. People had been using rudders on boats for centuries, and the notion of a rudder that would control yaw, and you turn it on its side to make it an elevator, and it controls pitch, that wasn't too difficult. Roll was the tough issue to get to. And the Wright brothers came up with a system called wing warping to establish roll control. And basically what it amounted to was putting a helical twist all the way across the wings of a biplane.
Wilbur spent hours watching birds feel their way through the currents of air. He noted the minute adjustments they make throughout their bodies, all the way out to their wingtips.
From watching birds, they got this notion that you could control the motion of an airplane in the air by actually changing the geometry of the wings.
To test their theories, the Wrights searched for a location with consistent winds, gentle elevation, and a soft place to land. Kitty Hawk, North Carolina was the answer. Their plan was to start with a glider, then add propellers and a gas-powered engine. But after 2 seasons, their glider could barely lift a man.
And so they built their first wind tunnel. The wind tunnel enabled the Wright brothers to test one surface after another very quickly.
The brothers knew that the key was in the shape of the wing, but they needed an efficient way to test their new designs, to get a feel for the air with small experimental wings. Meanwhile, Samuel Langley of the Smithsonian Institution was racing to be the first into the air. On December 8th, 1903, the world held its breath.
Samuel Langley is one of the world's great scientists. He's operating with tens of thousands of dollars worth of taxpayers' money. And he's doing it in public, in front of the New York Times and everyone. And he fails. And he fails in such a spectacular way. And a little more than a week later, 9 days later, on the Outer Banks at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, these 2 bicycle makers from Dayton, Ohio, go out and do it. They do what Langley had failed to do with just a handful of local citizens as witnesses.
On a cold December morning, a small crew of Kitty Hawk volunteers walked up the beach to help the Wright brothers.
All right, boys, give me a hand with this.
Together, they pushed the new propeller plane out to the launch rail.
One of the fellows who was there that morning described how the 2 of them, Orville and Wilbur, sort of walked off by themselves as they were getting ready to go and talked to one another and shook hands just privately, the 2 of them.
Orville was chosen to pilot this flight. After he climbed in, they turned over the propellers, and off she went.
They made 4 flights in all on the morning of the 17th. The 4th flight was over 850 feet, and they were in the air almost a minute, 59 seconds. And that convinced them they were capable of sustained flight. So that was the first day, December 17th, 1903, 4 flights.
Solving the problems of both lift and control helped the Wright brothers achieve flight. But they knew they had a long way to go before they could fly as precisely or as instinctively as a bird. Birds have the advantage of strong, hollow-boned wings, which flex and change shape to meet all the demands of getting into the air. Once aloft, the wing's natural shape allows a bird to soar. The special curve that all wings have in common causes passing air to accelerate over the upper surface, creating a partial vacuum which literally sucks the plane skyward, as if by magic. But air moving across irregular surfaces, like the struts and extra wing of a biplane, creates turbulence and slows the plane down. So more power is needed to overcome this loss of speed. Streamlined designs, like the DC-3, have greatly reduced air turbulence and drag. To increase the passenger load of a plane, more powerful engines are needed for greater thrust. In fact, one FA-18 Hornet turbofan jet can develop the same power as 230 Ferrari race cars. Design determines airspeed and maneuverability, for birds as well as planes. Shorter wings reduce drag and allow for more speed and sharper turns. A bird uses its entire body to guide a turn, even its head. Planes rely on forward motion for lift, while birds, who can direct thrust downward, can land on a dime. Directable engine thrust allows the Harrier to take off and land like a bird. Harriers can even hover. About the only thing they can't do is flap their wings. And unlike a helicopter, they can go over 600 miles an hour. What if we need to fly even faster, say 1,300 miles an hour, and then land in the space of a small parking lot? No one has to be more precise than the pilots who take off and land on the movable airports we call aircraft carriers.
Being selected as the Blue Angels really is a big honor, but it's important that people realize that we're all naval aviators, and we came from the fleet and we're going back to the fleet. The excitement and challenge of shipboard operations and landing and taking off aircraft carriers is something that we all look forward to going back to, and we miss it, believe me. We really do.
To take off, a powerful catapult slingshots the plane from 0 to 160 miles per hour in less than 2 seconds. Before such a launch, a pilot must be sure his control surfaces flex every bit as well as the wings of a bird, a very fast bird. Because such flying is so intense, the FA-18 is equipped with the latest high-tech aids.
They actually have a voice that speaks to you, kind of call your attention. And the engineers thought that the pilots would be more responsive to a woman's voice, so that's what they put in there.
Altitude. Altitude.
if you set a certain altitude, it'll come up and say, altitude, altitude, in a very calm voice. So sometimes they're a lot more calm than we are.
As a Blue Angel, Scott Anderson has seen his share of difficult flying. But if you think taking off from an aircraft carrier is tough, try landing on one in rough seas. It's the toughest challenge in aviation, and it's all about touch.
Spec 301, Hornet Autoball 56. Roger, ball auto, 20 knots forward.
The second he feels the deck beneath him, Scott hits the throttle so he can take off again if his hook doesn't catch the arresting cable.
You know, when you first miss, there's an incredible sinking feeling because you don't want to have to go up to the tanker. That kind of punishes the air wing. They can't turn to where they need to go. They've got to wait for you to get aboard. So there's a sense of you don't want to let the air wing down. You want to get back aboard the ship.
Altitude. Altitude.
Every time I come out of the wires, my knees are still shaking. My heart's pounding 1,000 miles an hour, and it takes a while to calm yourself down. But you go out there the next time, just fired up and ready to get after it because it's what we all love to do.
High-performance flight puts enormous stress on the body. An FA-18 can easily exceed the physical limits of the pilot. Imagine a roller coaster ride, but at hundreds of miles an hour. To pull G's like that, the Blue Angels avoid tobacco and alcohol, get plenty of sleep, and run at least 2 miles a day. When flying this close to the limit, it's possible for the plane to go into an out-of-control spin. Remember, a movement of only 1/8 of an inch can be the difference between flight and free fall. Pilots train for spin recovery, so they'll know what to do in a life-and-death situation. Besides slamming the pilot around, the increased G-forces can pull the blood from his brain and make him black out.
Coming out, coming out. Forward stick. Recovered. Roger that. Heading home.
The first thing that happens is what's called gray out, where you start losing your color vision. And then you experience what's called tunnel vision, and your periphery will start to close in, and the things on the edge will become black, and it starts closing in until basically you're looking through a soda straw. And then after that, you can have total blackout where you're conscious but you can't see. And then the final stage is the loss of consciousness.
Jet pilots experience G-loads and fast turns and climbs. But what about stunt flyers like champion Sean Tucker?
We go through these rapid onsets of high positive Gs to high negative Gs, sustained negative Gs where your head becomes engorged with blood and you're pushing, and then you come right away to a rapid onset of positive Gs. You can pass out like that. And you really have to know and understand when to hold them and when to back it off a bit.
To avoid blacking out in a spin, pilots learn to flex neck, chest, and leg muscles to trap blood in their brains. To achieve this kind of muscular control, the Blue Angels weight train for at least an hour every day. Pilots also train in a spin simulator, a centrifuge referred to by some as the swirling, hurling torture.
It is one of the most painful memories of my life because you're inside of a machine that is going to just put heavy G-forces on your body.
The centrifuge also teaches pilots like Ryan Scholl to rely on their instruments, not their senses, when they become disoriented. In the centrifuge, the pilot practices tensing muscles to hold blood in his head. The training is over, and the Blue Angels are ready for the air show circuit. The San Francisco show is one of their favorites. With most of the rough edges smoothed out, they perform with precision and grace.
Hi, how are you? You got your face all painted, huh? I barely saw you down there. I thought this was a little walking bush that came by.
The biggest surprise to me is the ability that we have to get through to the kids and to put a smile on the kids' faces.
Nice shades. Pretty futuristic.
The fact that I can have that kind of an influence over kids in school to get them to maybe try a little bit harder and to get excited about what they're doing is by far the most special part of the job for me.
Every week, the Blue Angels are at a new city, swapping stories with other pilots like Sean Tucker. The love of flying is a strong bond. So is the love of flying machines.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have got a magnificent show for you today. And we have plenty of seating room for you. We still have plenty of room for you in the bleachers. We got two lost kids here. We're going to do this quickly. Kyle and Justin, well, they know where they are, but their dad, Chris, is at Lost and Found.
Air shows are an overhead parade of airplanes, like the P-3 and the classic Russian MiG. Patty Wagstaff in her Extra 300S airplane is popular with the crowd.
Well, when I was 10 years old, I told my parents that I wanted to be an airline pilot. And they patted me on the back and smiled and said, "Patty, girls don't become pilots."
Patty became the first woman to win the National Aerobatic Championship.
I think aviation's a wonderful career for women, but at the same time, I know that as a woman, I'm under a lot more scrutiny than the men are. So that's the way I look at it. That little extra challenge just makes me a better pilot. Of course, there's an element of danger, but airshow pilots are the kind of people that require, I think, more intensity in their life.
Sean Tucker plays to the crowd with his son, who narrates his show.
Here's my dad, turning around and around until airspeed comes to zero, building up speeds up to 100 miles an hour backwards. This is my dad's version of the incredible Mr. Charlie Hillard torque roll.
My airplane is just a wonderful sky dancing machine. It's fabric, and I can feel the sky through that airplane, just like when you're sailing with a tiller and you're holding on to the sheet, you can feel the air through that rope. When I'm holding on to that stick, I can feel that air and I can bounce through the sky. And my routine is a very dramatic, tumbling end-over-end routine, and I come out of that maneuver and I pull it straight up and I fly backwards for 500 feet. I gotta feel that sky. You connect with an audience, and they come to not see us get hurt. They come to dream with us, and to be able to share that magic on this level with these people was a real blessing for me.
And if you look over to the right, you'll see a side-by-side with a third jumper down underneath. And that's the formation that's going to be the last to land, as that's going to be the formation carrying the flag. These canopies are round air type canopies. If you look at them as they get closer to the ground, you'll see that you can actually look into the canopies. They're shaped like the wing of an airplane and are completely maneuverable. You know, the Wright brothers, when they started to fly, discovered the way they could control the airplane was by warping the wing, and that's still how we're controlling these canopies.
To introduce the Blue Angels segment of the show, their C-130 transport crew demonstrates the jet-assisted takeoff.
Our show today concludes with a performance of the United States Navy Jet Demonstration Squadron, the Blue Angels.
Every flight's the Super Bowl, you know. We go out there and get fired up and just try to give it everything we have. It's the most challenging flying I've ever had to do.
Ready now.
What we really strive for is to make it look from the ground like it's easy. But when you get up there in the formation and see how hard everybody is working, all the little movements and all the minor corrections that are going on all the time, you get a distinct impression that it's not easy. Actually, we're a lot closer than what it looks on the ground. Turbulence doesn't help, although when we hit bumps, generally we all bump together, we all bounce the same amount, so you can't overreact to the turbulence.
The maneuver that Ryan and I really like is the tuck-away cross. We come in towards the crowd, and then we roll basically away from each other, and it looks like we're actually going to hit each other. I think the crowd really gets a jolt out of it.
By now, Ryan Scholl has mastered that elusive vertical roll. He does it almost by instinct. After months of fine-tuning, the Blue Angels have become the team they want to be. Each pilot has acquired a distinct feel for the air, but together, like the fingers of a skilled magician's hand, they fly as one. In the 100 years since the Wright brothers first took to the air, we have become like the birds. We have attained what was once far beyond our grasp, a feel for the sky.
I think everybody loves the idea of flying. Everybody loves the idea of being able to fly like a bird or having the freedom to soar above the waves or the ocean. And I think there's also a fear of flying too. So there's this part of us that wants to conquer that. But the rewards are so great that that when you do master it and when you are flying like a bird, you're free. That's why I love it.